There was a lack of respect. There was a certain sense of entitlement.
Those are the wrong clowns to consult with. Maybe for balloon animals at a child's birthday party, but not for geopolitical advice.
You already know this is going to be a good video when Scott Jennings compares getting advice from Democrats to a clown learning how to tie up balloon animals. In this video, we will go over all of the most recent meltdowns surrounding Donald Trump, Zelenskyy, and JD Vance. In fact, JD Vance has responded to all of the criticism. Also in this video, we have some very bad news for Democrats. So before we start the video, please like the video. It's the #1 way you can help this channel, and it helps others see the videos as well. Let us begin.
They're doing a disservice to the Ukrainians because their own populations are saying, we're not going to fund this war indefinitely. The American people are saying, we don't want to fund the war indefinitely. So the only thing that is in the best interest of America, of Russia, of Ukraine, and of Europe is to bring this thing to a close.
All right, so JD Vance is finally responding to all of the criticism from the European partners and Zelenskyy as far as how the United States is handling the war in Ukraine. However, these brand new statistics really changed this entire narrative.
Do Americans like the way that Trump's handling his job and compare it to how they felt about Joe Biden? So this is the net approval rating. It's just a different planet entirely. I mean, the gulf between these two is wider than the Gulf of America or Mexico, depending on which side of the aisle you stand on. He's at +2. So look, at this particular point, Americans are giving Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt. He's doing considerably better than Joe Biden was doing on the handling of the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
This is why I love making these videos, because despite all of the criticism from people who dislike Donald Trump and from the European partners, when you compare Donald Trump to Joe Biden and how he's handling this current war in Ukraine, it turns out the majority of Americans actually support Donald Trump. You can leave your comments and opinions down below how you feel about all of this.
But I will also point out that in 2022, in a phone call with Joe Biden had to scream at him on the phone, according to NBC News, and say, hey, you could be a little more grateful for what we're doing for you in the United States. Right. He's a frustrating guy to deal with. On that, we have bipartisan presidential consensus.
I get that.
And we have some more bad news for Democrats. Because look, the majority of Democrats, they stand with Zelenskyy, and they don't like how Donald Trump and JD Vance are handling this entire situation. But it turns out even Joe Biden had a bad experience with Zelenskyy as far as trying to negotiate. But it was behind the scenes on a phone call.
When you talk to leaders in private, whether they're Ukrainian or European, when you talk to people in private, they will tell you this cannot go on forever. There aren't enough Ukrainian lives, there isn't enough American money, and there isn't enough ammunition to fund this thing indefinitely.
Want a quicker end of the war, but Russia keeps its captured land. Look at this, 50%. Bare majority coming in here. You go back to August of 2022, it was at 31%. Now we're at 50%. I mean, that is a rocket ship upwards in terms of the Americans who want a quick end to the war.
So as you can see, JD Vance is absolutely correct with his response to all of the criticism. It turns out the majority of Americans want this war to end. I have no way to prove what's happening behind the scenes. According to JD Vance, a lot of people also want this war to end. But again, the stats don't lie.
I think Donald Trump is very unhappy with the way Zelenskyy conducted himself in the Oval Office. He is serious about getting both countries to the table. And he just couldn't bring himself to just sign the papers and head out. And so, look, I think Trump ran on ending the war. He said day one. We're not at day one right now, but he wants to end the war as soon as possible. He has managed to engage Putin in some kind of conversation. He thought he was engaging Zelenskyy. And then Zelenskyy goes out today and says, oh, we're very far away from ending the war.
So it's true. Donald Trump is pretty upset, and Donald Trump knows what the voters want and how Americans feel. Remember, the statistics show that Americans want this war to end, so of course Donald Trump is going to be pretty upset when the voters are not getting what Donald Trump promised.
What do you need to see from President Zelenskyy to restart these negotiations?
Well, I just think he should be more appreciative because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us because, as you know, that's right there. That's the border.
Donald Trump gave Ukraine javelins.
When
Obama gave them blankets. I get it. I get the talking point.
You can denigrate it,
I get
but
the
it's
talking
true.
point, but what I'm talking about
No,
is
the missiles are real things,
support
not
for
talking
Ukraine in this conflict. JD Vance and Donald Trump have both been, I would say Trump has been skeptical. Vance has been outright opposed. So do you acknowledge that Zelensky has thanked the United States?
He has on occasion.
Dozens of occasions.
But I will also point out.
Dozens of occasions.
Now, context matters, and I want you to think about this. It was very significant when Donald Trump gave money to Ukraine when he did, because this is when Russia was occupying Crimea. However, there was not a large-scale invasion. This was a message towards Russia, look, do not invade. We have the backs of the Ukrainians. So when Zelensky and world leaders and Democrats are telling Donald Trump, you don't support Ukraine, the stats show otherwise, because when Donald Trump gave this money, it was very significant for the time.
But you blame Joe Biden for the war?
This all started under Joe Biden.
But who started the war?
But my point is that war wouldn't have started if Donald Trump's in the White House. If we have a strong hand in the White House, Vladimir Putin does not go into Ukraine. That's just the truth. We had a weak hand in the White House.
Well,
Joe Biden let it happen.
That's your analysis and your view, but you don't know that for sure.
Okay, so the reason why you have the talking point that under Donald Trump the war would have never started is because technically speaking, the war never started or significant gains never started when Donald Trump was around. So that is why he uses the evidence of, in 2014, Crimea was annexed under Barack Obama, but then when Donald Trump came in, there never really seemed to be any sort of expansion from Russian troops. But then when Joe Biden came in, all of a sudden you had the mass expansion and deployment of Russian troops. That is why this seems to be a relevant talking point, and when you look at the statistics and polls, Americans seem to believe it, and they really side with Donald Trump. You can leave your comments down below how you feel about this talking point.
The exact wrong thing to do. I don't know who he's getting his political advice from, but he needs to stop listening. It sounds like maybe Chris Murphy and other Senate Democrats. If you want to understand how to deal with Donald Trump, those are the wrong clowns to consult with. Maybe for balloon animals at a child's birthday party, but not for geopolitical advice.
Now look, as all of this information is coming out, I really do think this is a very, very bad look for Democrats, considering there's already quite the divide between Republicans and Democrats, and of course with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, and considering the meeting did fall apart. Now, I'm not suggesting this is the Democrats' fault or the Republicans' fault, but again, it might be a lack of judgment from Zelensky to go to members of government who already don't get along with Donald Trump and J.D. Vance.
For this,
okay, people do not want government waste, that's for sure, but they didn't vote for foresters to get fired.
Look,
they didn't vote for the parks to be closed.
Look, you guys,
veterans to be fired.
You guys keep trying to create this fantasy land where Donald Trump is not popular, where Republicans are mad.
All right, we have some more bad news for Democrats. It turns out not a single Democrat is more popular than Donald Trump. Now, as I make this video will come out before Donald Trump makes his speech in front of members of Congress, just so you know.
Republicans are mad. They shut down the town halls.
Can you name a single Democrat in Congress who's more popular than Donald Trump right now?
Listen,
answer no.
Scott,
the reality is Republicans are so happy with this. They're not upset about it.
No,
the American people are happy about what's going on right now because for the first time in a long time, a president said,
Scott,
I'm actually going to reduce the size of government.
I'm told that Donald Trump, Mike Johnson, and the extreme MAGA Republicans are claiming that Democrats are sending paid protesters into their town hall meetings. What's wrong with y'all? What's wrong with y'all? We don't need to send paid protesters into your town hall meetings. The American people are with us all across the country.
Now, if you are unaware, there are some allegations towards Democrats that Democrats are bringing paid actors or paid protesters to Republican events, whether it's a town hall meeting or whatever. Again, I have no way to prove this. I just want to give you guys a complete storyline and understanding what Democrats are currently trying to combat against Donald Trump.
Nobody loves going to a Republican town hall meeting like crazed liberal Democrat activists. I have no doubt they are their constituents, but these people are they hated Donald Trump before, they hate Donald Trump today, and they're professional complainers when it comes to Republicans. Look, I guess you could take any of these conversations seriously, and the way to handle it is to stand up there and calmly and clearly explain that we've inherited a mess. The American people have entrusted the Republican Party to get us out of the mess. It's going to take a lot of work.
I'm really curious what you guys have to say about this. And again, this is my own opinion, just so you guys know, and if you care. Sometimes I do wonder, where do all of these people come from? Do people not have jobs? Like JD Vance literally went on a skiing trip, and all of a sudden you had all of these protesters show up. How did they know to get there? Like, who's organizing all of this at the last second? This is just my opinion and observation. I am not suggesting they're being paid. I often just question, where do people have all of the time and the money to get there?
To get us out of the mess. And here's what we're doing to do that. We're going to fix immigration. It's already happening. We're going to unleash American energy. That's going to be part of the reconciliation bill. You know, we're going to have less chaos in the world. And that's what Donald Trump's trying to do by negotiating an end to the war in Ukraine and get the Middle East under control. I mean, the Republican priorities are not complicated and they're very clear. But let me just tell you, having been to many of these town hall meetings over a 25-year career in politics, a lot of the people that show up at these things are there because they're committed partisan activists, not because they wandered in because they had some concern. I don't doubt that they are actual constituents. But if you think somebody that showed up with a hand-painted sign at a town hall meeting came in undecided, I got news for you. It just doesn't work that way.
Breaking news to tell you about on the FBI front. The head of the New York field office, James Dennehy, has retired under intense pressure. Had written this, quote, "Today we find ourselves in the middle of a battle of our own, as good people are being walked out of the FBI and others are being targeted because they did their jobs."
Okay, if you are unaware, the head of the FBI, who's in charge of the New York division, he was fired. Now, one thing I do want to point out is that 60% of Americans do not trust the FBI. I just want to put that stat out there as MSNBC is covering this story the way they always cover this story. Anyway, I'll just leave it at that. You can leave your opinions down below how you feel about this.
Well, you know, I went to visit a Head Start program in the suburbs here, suburbs of Chicago, and they had to lay a few people off as a result of the uncertainty of whether they would see the support from the federal government that they've always received.
Now, like I always do on this channel, I try to pinpoint what the next talking point is going to be or the argument against Donald Trump. MSNBC has been talking about this, so has CNN. Essentially, it looks like Democrats, members of government, even governors, it looks like they're trying to bring the faces of the people who got fired, they're claiming by Doge and the Trump administration. One thing I want to say is this. The majority of Americans, they do agree with cutting government waste. However, even amongst Republicans, there is quite a divide on the actions Donald Trump is taking or how harsh these actions are. You can leave your comments down below how you feel about this, but I just want to say, even amongst conservatives and Republicans, some people want Donald Trump to tone it down as far as trying to humanize these people a little bit more.
With President Trump and Elon Musk acting unrestrained, we are barreling down a dangerous path to a constitutional crisis. In the Judiciary Committee, which you serve on, we had 3 witnesses last week, nominees to serve in important positions in the Department of Justice. The question that was asked of them was very basic. Would you advise a public official in the United States of America to follow a court order? Just that simple, to follow a court order.
Another massive talking point from Democrats, and again, I'm just trying to give you guys the total picture, is the constitutional crisis talking point. However, I think this next talking point is a little shocking. Already talking about possibly the government shutting down and already talking about the midterms?
Instead, we are heading towards a potential government shutdown that will only hurt the American people.
It's amazing to me, by the way, we're having this debate because Joe Biden was president for 4 years and ran the country off into the ditch, and that's why Kamala Harris lost the election. And now Donald Trump's been president for about 5 minutes, and Democrats are like, well, my gosh, why isn't somebody fixing all the problems we caused? I just don't think voters are that silly, really. I mean, I think they take a longer view of this. His report card will ultimately come in the midterms, which isn't until next year. Until then, he's got to get the Republicans in Congress to come along with him on this reconciliation plan, on extending and making permanent the tax cuts, and then the American people are going to give it a chance to work.
And again, we do have some more bad news for Democrats. When you look at the statistics and you look at the polls, it turns out a lot of people actually like Donald Trump right now.
You look closer at the poll, yes, you have Republicans
approving by overwhelming amount. You have Democrats disapproving, but the real number is a 59% of independents who don't approve of what he is doing right now. And so things like cutting the government, ensuring that federal government workers like veterans are unemployed, all of those things are taking a toll on Donald Trump. And as we head into the State of the Union, that's not good news for Donald Trump.
Now look, whenever you cross-reference almost every single poll as to how Donald Trump is doing, the majority of Republicans or conservatives, they are on board with how Donald Trump is handling things. The reason why this is relevant is because every single thing Donald Trump said he was going to do or tried to do, this is what Republicans and conservatives have voted for. Nothing has really swayed away from the initial thing you voted for with Donald Trump. So because of this, it turns out the majority of Americans, or near majority of Americans, tend to be favorable with how Donald Trump is handling things, especially like we saw with the war in Ukraine. Anyway, if you are still watching this video, thank you so much for being here. We still have so much more work to do. This is a 24/7 operation. God bless all of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you guys later. Bye.